And the amazing thing is watching that Eric presence come and go and the Jody presence come and go is that which remains at all times.
Absolutely.
And that makes all the difference. Touching base with that over and over again. So it's like just dipping into a vat of dye. And every time you dip in um, and you pull the cloth out, it's a little more of the solid color of what you actually are.
Yeah, and we're never a part of it. So even when the characters of Eric and Jody come online, we're never separate from that which we are identifying that is our true self.
Right.
So our mind can believe that we're separate. Oh, I reacted this way and I shouldn't have, and so I'm separate from this I am presence, and I am presence wouldn't do that, and that's just not true. The I am is here pervading everything always, whether we're sleeping or driving or doing the dishes or reacting or responding. And it's really just about not judging. I think that's where the judge, I've noticed for myself, that's been a deep practice of mine of allowing the human nature to show up as she wants to, but not becoming identified with it. That's the key. Allowing it
And
to express.
that's the big um, that's where the course leads you into the amazing thing. The amazing thing with judgment is how I can catch myself um, uh, those little judgments coming in, and even judging my ability to be non-judging. That it's almost infinite regression. That there's always a hook that can catch you. Um, but the key is letting all of that go to catch your own judgment and don't judge it. Just relax. Be the presence of which you are.
Absolutely. A question that comes to my mind often when I'm in that space and I recognize it is just simply, who's the I that's judging? Who's the I that's judging right now? Because it's never the I am. It's never the big I. It's always the small I. Always, without exception.
Right.
Yep.
That and that silence that answers all of those questions is profound, and uh, the fact that we can just keep returning to it. And I really do think, as I said in that lesson 122, that it offers everything that I need. That um, it has been a number of years since I felt that frantic energy of um, seeking for something that was so subtle. And it's amazing that we're seeking something that's already present.
Absolutely. It's already here always. Yeah. And the seeking mind seeks. And that's what the seeking mind does because it's lacking, because it's believing that it's the separate entity. It's separated itself from God. And so of course it's looking, saying, where's my other half? Where's this piece?
Right.
And the I that wakes up, of course, is not the I am. The character, the small I doesn't wake up. Um, which is all tied to the seeking and the judging and everything we're talking about. But absolutely the answers are in the silence. And silence doesn't always mean that the room is quiet or that there can still be sensations happening, still thoughts running rampant, but coming into the I am. Re- I've shifted away from saying returning because again, that elicits my mind going, hey, you're separate from it. It's recognizing. It's just simply just recognizing that it's here always. And that's, when we're in the figuring out mind, when we're in the analytical, what am I going to do mind? Oh no, this thing is happening and all the thoughts are happening. That's my go-to, is just closing my eyes or not closing my eyes. Sometimes I can't close my eyes and the Jody character has gotten activated and I'm driving. It's just recognition, a recognition of what I already am. And then the answers from there come from that silence, and they're not from the ego.
Jody, how has forgiveness played in with your recognition of the I am presence?
So forgiveness for me, in alignment with the Course in Miracles, is just that, allowing things to be exactly as they are and not judge them. That's it. Because again, I think that just peels the layers off from the personal self becoming involved and interested in the happenings of the world, making the dream more real. And so when instead I can come into a place of maybe not love right off the bat, but a sense of neutrality, then the I am presence is more I'm more aware. I'm recognizing it on a deeper level than with all the judgments and the personal self-identification chatter.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does.
Okay.
Because like everything else, especially maybe in the spiritual traditions, we think complicated is better. That you know, we we love the sound of things that seem far out and strange, and um, that because it holds a promise of something mysterious. But this sense of returning home I mean, it is a mystery, but it's not mysterious because it really is home, and it's so available that when you, it's almost like you're falling back into it. And
Absolutely.
when you're there, um, you just know. Um, and of
I'm
course, if you're bumped out of it, not that you're ever really out of it, um, then those questions come up. How do I get it back? Um, for me, there was a heavy, almost a depression because I started a lot of this because I didn't like myself.
mm,
And when you have that moment of welcoming silence and everything is still and everything is accepting, um, and you feel at home, and then that Eric character comes rushing back, it was almost like you again. I'd had
mhm.
enough of you. I was hoping that you were gone. So it took me a little bit to uh, make peace with the return of that um, character, and now um, that's part of my forgiveness practice. Actually, is forgiving the judgment of myself of
Mm.
that personality ever needed to go anywhere.
That's right. Yeah. We're not asked to do anything again, but to accept the changelessness, the eternal, and abide as that. So I too have had abandonment stories. I lost my dad to suicide when I was 15. And so that blended itself into, my adulthood and abandonment and self-hatred and just all the things. But those can all be brought in as awareness, showing it as awareness. And yeah, to resist, I think, just perpetuates the personal self identification, as I'm sure that you've experienced yourself. But the more I resisted my personality traits and the this and the that, the more I hated myself.
Right.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, it goes back to again non-judgment and bringing that to the Holy Spirit.
what? So was it that that personal sense of um, not being worthy of the blame and the judgment that brought you originally to the course?
Yeah. So by the time I got to the course, it was 2009 around there, and at that point, my dad died when I was 15, so I think that was like 19 years later, and I was still carrying that pain, the blame, the shame, the stories, and I got to a point where I was ready. I actually had so here's actually I don't think I've actually ever formally shared this, so I'm kind of excited. Um, in 2010, I was in a dark space in the sense of I had not healed. I went to therapy and I did all the things, traditionally that I could around my dad's suicide. But I just got to a place where I wanted just to release. And long story short, something triggered me, which then triggered my my ego even more, which then triggered my abandonment issues. And what I always did was I always grabbed my dad's journals. He had left me 5 journals when he had died. And so anytime I felt like I wanted to be close to him, I would take his journals and I would read them. And so I was on the patio and I was crying and sobbing, angry at God. I was brought up Catholic, so I had a lot of like the anger and just all of the things. And I just kept saying, why? I want to release this. Help me, God, help me, God. And in that frantic moment, a still, small, very clear, very direct voice said, "You are not lacking your father's journal. You are not lacking your father's suicide note. You are lacking a shift in perception to see your dad's journal." And it was much more clear than that. I'm kind of getting the two stories mixed up, but in that moment, I just had a recognition of seeing things through a different lens, and that was through love rather than fear, because my whole teenage years, 20s, 30s, were all based on this lack. I was missing something. And for me, it was a suicide note. Um, Here's the words that came up. It was, "You're not lacking a suicide note. You're failing to see the gift in your dad's 5 journals." And then from there, I had this awakening of I don't know I can't even put it into words, but it was a peace and love that it was tied to heaven. That's all I can say. It was just, not heaven as an outside place, but
Right.
it was a really big shift in perception. And from that moment on, I mean, the next day I walked out of my garage and I was putting the kids in the car, and I saw the birds, and everything sounded louder, everything was more clear. And then that really led me into spiritual seeking, like, what is happening? What is going on? And I joined unity churches and all different things. And then I was led to A Course in Miracles. But it was from the suffering, ultimately. All that to say, it was the suffering that led me to A Course in Miracles.
Um, and you literally had the experience of a miracle. That the definition by A Course in Miracles is a shift in perception.
Like that.
And when you read that, did you think that's what happened?
Absolutely. I did. And it was very clear to me as to why I was being drawn to A Course in Miracles. The further I read it, the further I began to really understand. I could see that, yeah, there was a lot of things where that's what that was, or um, this is what I'm experiencing right now. Yeah, even though it was very abstract or
Right.
felt it.
Um, and of course, there was the suffering. You mentioned your father's suicide, uh, but everything that led up to that suicide had to have a great, great impact on you.
It did. Um, it did in the sense of in the earthly realm. I mean, I think even going back to the child, I think I've always been one to ask really big questions. I remember lying in my bed as a young little girl saying, "Who am I? What is this?" Knowing that there's something bigger. Um, but I would say what led to that was love. Honestly, I look back at the pain of my dad's death, and it all comes back to love. I loved deeply, of course, my own father on this earthly plane. Um, but then I say that, and I can also recognize that love for my dad is pales in comparison of how we understand love as it pertains to A Course in Miracles. Um, so yeah, the things leading up to my father's death, um, my life was actually pretty easy up until that point. I thought I had life all figured out at the age of 15. It's laughable.
It is, but no less laughable than me thinking I had things figured out when I was 35.
Right.
Um, and uh, David Fishman,
Yeah.
uh, he recommended his own practice, and he said, "Give it a try. Um, Work with lesson 25 in your daily life. I don't know what anything is for."
Oh, yeah.
And boy, when I was 30, when I was 15, when I was 30, heck, even when I was 50, uh, I knew what everything. I was assured that I knew what everything was for. Um, and I would not only did I know, I would tell you that you don't know what it's for. But I can fix it. I can help you. Um, and so yeah, that self-assurity of a teenager uh,
Yeah.
carries over for quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely. But honestly, I'm so grateful for the suffering that I experienced, not just with my dad's suicide, but there was many other crises after that. As a Course in Miracles student, and I almost lost my son. He was in the ICU. He was on a whole breathing tube. And again, bringing in that don't know mind is, I think, what you're speaking to, that don't know mind. I don't know what anything is for. I don't know what I am. Um, I think just allows that I am presence to pervade the whole experience. So yeah, I'm grateful I suffered as much as I did, because now I don't suffer.
Right.
I mean, within reason, sometimes the character wants to tell stories, but then it just dissolves into the nothingness that it is, because it's nothing.
And I think some people when they hear us say or they hear someone say, "I don't suffer anymore" or "my suffering is reduced," they think that things don't happen.
Mm,
But as you mentioned with your son, things happen. Life continues. Things that even judgment continues, and we might say this is bad. Um, but a large degree of that psychological suffering that used to be attached to things um, just isn't there.
absolutely. And I completely agree with you in the sense of there's this misbelief that if you work A Course in Miracles just right, everything will be harmonious. And I fell victim to that. And in truth, that um, I was gifted quite the opportunity to let all of that come crashing down, actually, in 2022. And I'm sharing this because my son has said he's given me permission over the years to share this. But my oldest son had a suicide attempt, and needless to say, it rocked me to my very core, even as a Course in Miracles student, largely tied to my dad. And all of that was coming up for healing. And then a year later, I almost lost my oldest son. And looking back, as a practicing A Course in Miracles student, I didn't shove those human emotions down, the mother in me who wanted to protect her children. Um, Instead, I was in the cinema with Jesus, watching this with neutrality and fully surrendering to the point where I remember driving to the hospital with my older son to go see him in the ICU. And I said, okay, if he's going to transition, he's going to transition. And there was a deep, and that wasn't me, Jody, the character, because, the mother is, wanting to protect. But I just felt this deep seeking and resisting nothing, and allowing everything, surrendering everything. And the more exceptions I made, the more pain I was in. And so I've adopted this practice of not making exceptions and recognizing that when I am upset, no matter how small, I don't make exceptions, or I recognize making exceptions. And who is the I that's making exceptions? It's
Right.
not it's not the I am, it's the small I.
Jody, that story to me felt like almost like you experienced a sigh, like you just everything being let go. So when you said surrendered, that's the image that came to mind, was just this big sigh of, um, I truly um, accept things as they are. Um, and you know, we should probably mention that when you said neutrality, um, that the neutrality that's experienced is really love.
Hmm. That's it. Love in its purest form. Yeah.
Um, we did have someone ask a question earlier in the live stream about what is love, and I think you described it so beautifully there. Um, that and that the neutrality of love in its purest form, as you said, is what allows us to hold someone when they're suffering so much, including ourselves.
Yep. Absolutely. That is love. Love is what we are. And we hear that, and that sounds grand and that sounds wonderful. But if we really knew that love is what we are, we wouldn't get as tripped up or more identified as the small self. If we truly knew that love is what we are on a deep, deep, deep fundamental level, there's nothing that can touch it, because love in its purest form is eternal. It's changeless. It's formless.
And of course, this is what you've been pointing to this entire conversation. This is what A Course in Miracles points to.
Yeah. It's simple. Our minds just make it so complex, and it makes it so, the practices, and I've had that experience over the years of, am I doing the practices? Okay, I'm not judging. Okay, I'm not doing this. And I think a little bit of the conceptual mind is needed at first, but then, just for an understanding. And so it's integrated. Um, but then everything for me just continues to point back, beyond all the practices that A Course in Miracles offers and the lessons and everything. It's just this. It's just this. And we can sense it. If you're not driving, you can place your hands on your heart, or just, you can have your eyes opened or closed. It doesn't matter. I am is here. And so it's about sensing it. Thoughts can spin, they can swirl around. But what you are, what I am, what we all are, is just this pure, effortless awareness that is the I am. And that's it.
Thank you for
That's
that,
it.
Judy.
Yeah.